Chapter 1 Predicament Turning Point. Zhao Country, King Marketplace. At dusk, Li Chang'an sat cross-legged in his room, slowly circulating his cultivation technique. 10 years of cultivation, and I've finally broken through to the qi refining third layer. As he sensed his cultivation, Li Chang'an felt no great joy, only letting out a deep sigh. The path of cultivation immortality is truly difficult. He had originally been an unremarkable university student. On his way back to his hometown, he'd had an incredible stroke of luck and was reincarnated into this cultivation immortality world as a young farm boy. At 15, his past life's memories awakened, and he resolutely embarked on the path to seek immortality. After enduring many hardships, he finally arrived before an immortal sect. He had hoped to pass their trials and become a disciple of the immortal sect. But the result was cruel. A low-grade spirit root. Furthermore, he was too old. He couldn't compare to the 7- or 8-year-old children and lacked potential. He was completely unqualified to enter an immortal sect. With no other choice, he could only come to this King Marketplace and become an ordinary, low-level cultivator. In the blink of an eye, 10 years had passed. Due to his poor spiritual root aptitude and a lack of cultivation resources, he had only just managed to break through to the qi refining third layer. At this cultivation speed, longevity is hopeless. Li Chang'an's feelings were complicated. After all, he had already died once. He was unwilling to experience reincarnation again. In this life, I pursue cultivation immortality only for eternal life. With my aptitude, forget longevity. Even reaching foundation establishment will be a huge problem. Li Chang'an couldn't help but feel emotional. Suddenly, a knock came from outside. Knock, knock, knock. A familiar voice came from outside the door. Li Chang'an, are you home? Hearing the voice, Li Chang'an got up to open the door. Outside stood a middle-aged man dressed in brocade with a wealthy, portly appearance. Zhang Jinbao, a steward of King Marketplace. Steward Zhang. Li Chang'an's expression was respectful. Not daring to be slow, he immediately invited him inside to talk. Zhang Jinbao waved his hand, remaining standing outside the door. His eyes narrowed slightly as he sized up Li Chang'an. You broke through, kid. I got lucky and managed to break through. Li Chang'an didn't dare to hide it and answered truthfully. Zhang Jinbao said with a grin, breaking through is perfect. The stronger you are, the easier it will be to complete the task assigned to you this year. Hearing this, Li Chang'an's heart sank. Back then, after being rejected by the immortal sect, those like him who failed the selection had signed a spirit contract with the foundation establishment Zhang family, who controlled King He Marketplace, just to embark on the path of cultivation. According to the spirit contract, the Zhang family provided them with a cultivation technique and cultivation insights, and allowed them to cultivate on the spirit vein within the marketplace. In return, they had to complete certain tasks for the Zhang family every year. The spirit contract lasted for a total of 15 years. For the past 10 years, the task assigned to Li Chang'an was always to farm the spirit fields. This task was relatively easy and didn't have high requirements for one's cultivation. In another 5 years, he would be truly free. But now, the task Zhang Jinbao was assigning him was actually related to his cultivation level. This made Li Chang'an a little uneasy. Steward Zhang, what task have I been assigned this year? He asked, feeling apprehensive and slightly nervous. The corners of Zhang Jinbao's mouth lifted as he took in Li Chang'an's reaction. It's nothing troublesome, just mining some spiritual ore. Mining? Li Chang'an was shocked. Of all the tasks assigned by the Zhang family, mining was the one he wanted to avoid the most. This was because all sorts of accidents frequently occurred in the Zhang family's mines. Just last year, a major disaster had happened, killing a large number of people. Furthermore, the spiritual ore mines were filled with a large amount of deadly dust that was impossible to guard against. Many cultivators who had worked in the mines said, 1 year of mining shaves off 10 years of your life. Many went in perfectly fine, only to return as invalids, coughing and wheezing all day long. Is there no need for farming this year? Li Chang'an's voice was a bit hoarse. He really didn't want to go mining. Zhang Jinbao shook his head. Farming naturally needs people, but you, kid, just have bad luck and got assigned to the mines. Steward Zhang, perhaps you could pull some strings. As he spoke, Li Chang'an took out a small cloth pouch and stuffed it into Zhang Jinbao's hand. Inside the pouch were a total of 20 spirit stones. This was his entire life savings, accumulated over all these years. Li Chang'an felt a pang in his heart, but he had to do it. As long as I'm safe, I can always earn more spirit stones. You're an interesting kid. The smile on Zhang Jinbao's face widened, and he squinted as he glanced at the pouch. The next moment, the cloth pouch in his hand vanished. It had gone into the storage pouch at his waist. I'll be heading back now. You'll all be formally notified in a few days. Zhang Jinbao said nothing more. Then with a face full of smiles, he turned and left. Take care, Steward Zheng. Li Chang'an bowed slightly, watching him leave. Watching his receding back, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as he took the spirit stones, it should be fine. Taking money to get things done, that's a universal law, whether in the mortal world or the cultivation realm. Li Chang'an felt a little more at ease. He closed his door and continued his cultivation. He had thought this year's task would be farming again. 3 days later. However, Li Chang'an received a notice. The original assignment had not been changed. His task was still mining. How could this be? Li Chang'an's eyes widened as he stared at the conscription order in his hand. He gripped the order tightly, his chest heaving. Zhang Jinbao clearly took the spirit stones. Why didn't he do anything? He immediately left and hurried to find Zhang Jinbao to ask for an explanation. Zhang Jinbao still had that same beaming expression, like a Maitreya Buddha, as he explained. Li Chang'an, it's not that I don't want to help you. It's just that some people gave more than you did, kid, so I had to change their tasks first. The implication was clear. If Li Chang'an could produce more spirit stones, Zhang Jinbao would naturally change the assignment for him. But the spirit stones in that small cloth pouch were already Li Chang'an's entire fortune. Where was he supposed to get more? Steward Zheng, is there no other way? None. Zhang Jinbao shook his head. Seeing that Li Chang'an couldn't produce any more, his attitude became casual. I have a lot to do. I can't stand here chit-chatting with you, kid. If there's nothing else, go on back. Yes, yes. Li Chang'an forced a smile, but his heart was seething with frustration. From the looks of it, Zhang Jinbao had no intention of returning the spirit stones. Not doing the job and not returning the spirit stones, how is that any different from outright robbery? But alas, when you're under someone else's roof, you have to bow your head. He lowered his head and turned to leave. That night, Li Chang'an tossed and turned. Do I really have to go mining? He was worried and couldn't fall asleep. If he didn't go, he would be violating the spirit contract and suffer a severe backlash. Just then, a golden light suddenly flashed before his eyes. Immediately after, a few lines of brilliant golden text appeared before him. Divination has been refreshed. Today's divination, Auspicious. Anxious, you take a walk by the riverbank to clear your head. There, under a willow tree, you happen to find the jade pendant of the Zhang family's eldest daughter among the water weeds. These few lines of text that appeared out of nowhere made Li Chang'an freeze for a moment. This is. His eyes widened as he immediately realized what was happening. It's my golden finger. Immediately, a wave of ecstasy washed over him. 10 years. I've waited for a full 10 years. Li Chang'an took several deep breaths, barely suppressing his excitement as he carefully read the divination, afraid it was just an illusion. Thank goodness it's not an illusion. Chapter 2, easily resolved. His gaze landed on the contents of the divination. Li Chang'an's eyes lit up, and his heart began to beat a little faster. The Zhang family young Mrs. Jade pendant. If I find this jade pendant, I can use it as an excuse to request an audience with the Zhang family's young miss. Then there might be a turn of events regarding the mining assignment. Li Chang'an immediately stood up. Without a moment's hesitation, he headed out the door. I hope this golden finger isn't wrong. The night was deep, and a bright moon hung high in the sky. Not far from his door was a large, shimmering river. The Qingshui River. The Chang'an marketplace got its name precisely because it was built along this river. As far as the eye could see, the riverbank was shaded by green willows, their countless branches swaying in the moonlight. The divination said it was under a willow tree, but not which one. I'll just have to search carefully. Li Chang'an patiently began his search by the light of the moon. The river was calm, and the waterweeds grew thick. He focused his full attention, his eyes scanning the area under each willow tree. About an hour passed, and Li Chang'an's eyes started to feel dry. Finally, beneath an old willow tree, he saw a faint glimmer of light. Found it. Li Chang'an's gaze sharpened and he froze. He glanced around, then cautiously crouched down and parted the tangled waterweeds. Before him was an exquisite jade pendant, smooth and translucent with delicate patterns. The character for Zheng was carved on its face. Li Chang'an's hand shot out and snatched it. He quickly tucked it into his robes. Having done all this, he let out a ragged breath. It was the Zheng family's young Mrs. Jade pendant, after all. If someone else saw it, it would most likely cause unnecessary trouble. Li Chang'an didn't dare to linger. He got up and headed home. After returning home, he shut the door. Only then did he let out a long sigh of relief. Good, nothing went wrong. Li Chang'an took out the jade pendant to examine it closely, an irrepressible excitement rising in his heart. The golden finger was right. With the help of the divination, his future immortal path would be much smoother. Perhaps there was truly hope of treading the legendary path of longevity. It was quite a while before Li Chang'an managed to calm down. Now isn't the time. I'll go find the young miss tomorrow morning. He suppressed his many racing thoughts. Li Chang'an closed his eyes and meditated, staying awake the entire night. Time slowly passed. Before he knew it, the darkness of night had receded and the morning rooster crowed, heralding the dawn. Li Chang'an opened his eyes, got up, and left his home, heading towards the central area of the marketplace. The Zheng family's young miss lived in that area, and would occasionally appear to handle disputes within the marketplace. Before long, Li Chang'an stopped outside a small courtyard. Knock, knock, knock. He knocked on the courtyard gate, the sound dull and heavy. Soon, a maid opened the gate and looked at Li Chang'an warily. What do you want? Miss, I found this jade pendant with the character for Zheng carved on it. I believe it belongs to the Zheng family. I would be grateful if you could inform them. Li Chang'an explained his purpose and took out the jade pendant. A flash of surprise crossed the maid's eyes, and she immediately invited Li Chang'an into the courtyard. Please wait a moment. I will go inform the young miss. With that, she walked toward the inner courtyard. Li Chang'an sat in the courtyard and waited quietly. Not long after, a gentle and pleasant voice sounded. A few days ago, I went to slay a troublesome water demon and accidentally lost my jade pendant. Thank you, Taoist, for returning it. Her voice was like the song of an oriole, as pleasant as a trickling stream, soothing the soul. Li Chang'an instinctively looked up. He saw a young woman dressed in a long bluish-green dress. Her features were delicate, with elegant brows and eyes as clear as water. She carried herself with a graceful and gentle air. It was none other than the young miss of the Zheng family. Zheng Qingqing. Li Chang'an immediately stood and cupped his hands in a salute. Greetings, young miss. There's no need to be so formal, Taoist. Zheng Qingqing broke into a gentle and charming smile. She spoke gently as she asked about the jade pendant. May I ask where you found it, Taoist? On the southern side of the marketplace, by the Qingshui riverbank. Li Chang'an responded in detail, recounting the entire course of events. He explained that he had signed a spirit contract with the Zheng family and had been assigned to the mines this year, which made him too anxious to sleep. So he had gone to the riverbank to clear his head and had unexpectedly found the jade pendant. The mines. Zheng Qingqing was a smart person. She understood the implication in Li Chang'an's words. She pursed her lips and smiled. That's a simple matter. I just need to have a word with Zheng Jinbao. You don't have to worry anymore, Taoist Li. Thank you, young miss. Li Chang'an was overjoyed. I can't believe it was resolved so easily. This young miss of the Zheng family was not only exceptionally intelligent, but also very easy to talk to. Li Chang'an had prepared a whole speech, but none of it was needed. It seemed Zheng Qingqing felt that wasn't enough. How about this? For the next 5 years, you won't have to do any tasks, Taoist Li. Just focus on your cultivation. She gently stroked the jade pendant, her tone very soft. After 5 years, whether you go or stay will be entirely up to you. Hearing this, Li Chang'an was even more delighted. He immediately thanked her. A moment later, Li Chang'an left the small courtyard, more than half of the anxiety in his heart already gone. Now, all that's left is to see if the young miss will keep her promise. In the courtyard, the maid poured a cup of tea for Zheng Qingqing and said in a low voice, Young miss, I did some checking. This Li Chang'an has a low-grade spirit root. His past performance has been mediocre, with no particular strengths. In that short amount of time, she had already investigated Li Chang'an's past thoroughly, confirming he was just an ordinary low-level cultivator. Zhang Qingqing nodded slightly. All right, I understand. Young miss, should we keep a closer eye on him? No need. It seems he's just a lucky person. We probably won't have much interaction in the future. Zhang Qingqing then instructed the maid to make a trip to Zhang Jinbao's residence to fulfill her earlier promise. The matter was thus concluded. On the edge of the marketplace, inside his house, Li Chang'an had just finished breakfast. Suddenly, a knock sounded at the door. It was that familiar voice again. Chang'an, are you home? Li Chang'an opened the door. Standing outside was none other than the marketplace steward, Zhang Jinbao. He had completely changed his previous casual attitude, his face now wreathed in smiles. Chang'an, about what happened before, I was too crude, please don't take it to heart. As he spoke, he stuffed a small cloth pouch into Li Chang'an's hand. Inside the pouch were a full 40 spirit stones. Double the original amount. Li Chang'an feigned surprise. Steward Zhang, what is this for? Stop pretending, you brat. You know the young miss, why didn't you say so sooner? Zhang Jinbao patted Li Chang'an on the shoulder as if he were a familiar elder. He smiled and said, don't worry, from now on just focus on your cultivation. I won't assign you any more tasks. Thank you, steward. Li Chang'an breathed a sigh of relief, his worries finally put to rest. The young miss keeps her promises, she does what she says. For the next few years, he could enjoy a period of peaceful cultivation. Steward Zhang, please take these spirit stones back. Li Chang'an took only the 20 that belonged to him and offered the other 20 back to Zhang Jinbao. He knew very well that this man was insatiably greedy. He couldn't afford to offend him over a mere 20 spirit stones. But Zhang Jinbao's attitude was firm. You take them, you can't cultivate without spirit stones. He pushed Li Chang'an's hand right back. Li Chang'an was helpless. Zhang Jinbao was dead set on making him take these spirit stones. Chapter 3 Divination, Ominous. Zhang Jinbao felt helpless as well. He really hadn't expected this. That an insignificant, bottom-tier cultivator like Li Chang'an would actually know the young miss. Unsure how much Li Chang'an meant to the young miss, he had no choice but to spend his way out of trouble. I can't afford to offend the young miss over him. In the end, Li Chang'an accepted the spirit stones. Seeing this, the smile on Zhang Jinbao's face grew a bit wider. All right, Chang'an, I still have matters to attend to in the marketplace. Let's talk more when we have the chance. Take care, Steward Zhang. All right. Zhang Jinbao was all smiles as he turned and left. The moment he turned, the smile vanished from his face. He inwardly cursed his rotten luck. Indoors, Li Chang'an closed the door to his room. He calmed himself and thought for a moment. Zhang Jinbao's status isn't low. He definitely felt resentful for having to apologize to a bottom-tier cultivator like me. Still, as long as he was inside the marketplace, he shouldn't dare to make a move on him openly, thanks to his connection with the young miss. At this thought, Li Chang'an warned himself. From now on in the marketplace, I need to be cautious with my words and actions and cultivate discreetly. As long as I don't cause any trouble, Zhang Jinbao will have no reason to act against me. Until I'm strong enough, the more discreet the better. Strength is the foundation of everything. Li Chang'an sat down cross-legged, not wasting a single moment, and began today's cultivation. At the same time, there was a bit of anticipation in his heart. I wonder what tonight's divination will be. Time passed, and the sun set behind the western mountains. Before he knew it, the night was deep. Just after midnight, a golden light suddenly flashed before Li Chang'an's eyes, transforming into a few lines of text. Divination refreshed. Today's divination, evil. A friend will invite you to explore an ancient cultivator's abode. You will go eagerly, but a sudden disaster will strike within. Your group will suffer heavy casualties, and you will be gravely wounded. An evil trigram. Li Chang'an's eyelid twitched. An invitation from a friend. Li Chang'an pondered. He didn't have many friends. Just the few who had failed the immortal sect's entrance trial, alongside him and later came to the king marketplace. A few of them were from his hometown, and he was on good terms with them. If it's an invitation from them, I would most likely have gone, only to end up gravely wounded. Chang'an was secretly relieved. With the divinations, my path to cultivation immortality is so much more secure. The next day at noon, a knock sounded at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Chang'an got up to open the door. Standing at the door was a dark-skinned young man with a simple, honest face. It was Su Fugui. He came from the same mortal village as Chang'an, had embarked on the path to immortality with him, and had come with him to the king marketplace. Of all the people from their village, he and Chang'an were the closest. The reason was simple. In this life, Chang'an's parents had passed away early on. Seeing him orphaned and alone, Su Fugui's parents had often helped him out. Fugui, is there something you need? Chang'an asked with a smile. Su Fugui's face was alight with excitement. Brother Li, it's good news, great news. He sounded thrilled, as if he'd stumbled upon the opportunity of a lifetime. Early this morning, while Chu Danyu and I were in the mountains gathering firewood, we discovered an old abode left behind by a cultivator from a past era. It was just as the divination had described. He had come to invite Chang'an to explore the abode with him. Brother Li, that abode is protected by an array, but the array is already in ruins. If we work together, we can definitely break through its weak point and get it open. Su Fugui's eyes gleamed with excitement. They guessed that the abode was left behind by, at the very least, an expert at the late stage of qi refining. There had to be a lot of treasure inside. Brother Li, hurry and come with me. We're going to get a few more people. Su Fugui could hardly wait. But Chang'an shook his head slightly. Fugui, an ancient abode like that might not just have treasure. It could also have all sorts of traps and mechanisms. I prefer to play it safe, and I'm not willing to take that risk. Huh? Su Fugui was startled. A look of astonishment appeared on his face. Brother Li, this is a rare opportunity. Fugui, you should understand that opportunity and danger go hand in hand. Chang'an's voice was calm as he looked at him and said, Actually, I hope you won't go either. Upon hearing this, Su Fugui was suddenly torn. Before leaving home, his parents had instructed him that he must listen to Chang'an. But now, with such a great opportunity right in front of him, he really didn't want to give it up. Brother Li, I'll go discuss it with Chu Danyu and the others. Su Fugui bit his lip and hurriedly ran off. Chang'an didn't say anything more. He was grateful for the help Su Fugui's parents had given him, so he had spoken up to dissuade him. But he couldn't forcibly stop Su Fugui. After all, he had no reason to. The matter of the divinations was his biggest secret. He wouldn't tell anyone. Not long after, Su Fugui, Chu Danyu, and the others finished their discussion and decided to head into the mountains together. Their group consisted of more than 10 people. Although they were all in the early stage of qi refining, with the strongest being only at the qi refining third layer, they were all very confident. With all of us working together, we'll definitely be able to break that array. Su Fugui pumped his fist. Before leaving, he glanced back at Chang'an's residence, thinking it was a shame. The haul from this is going to be huge. It's a shame Brother Li isn't coming. Su Fugui sighed. Indoors, Chang'an sat cross-legged, circulating his spiritual power. He pushed the matter of the abode to the back of his mind and focused solely on his personal cultivation. Before he knew it, it was late at night once more. Just after midnight, a new divination appeared before Chang'an's eyes. Divination refreshed. Today's divination, Auspicious. You will go into the mountains to fell trees and will unexpectedly discover a fox den. Inside, you will find a jade scroll containing a talismanic inheritance. A talismanic inheritance. Chang'an's gaze burned, and he felt a sudden surge of joy. In the cultivation immortality realm, there is the concept of the 100 skills of cultivation immortality. Skills such as alchemy, talisman painting, artifact refining, and array formation all belong to the 100 skills of cultivation immortality. A loose cultivator with one of these skills has a much easier path than an ordinary one. As long as I have a skill, even just a tier 1 low-grade one, I can cover my basic cultivation needs. The reason why Chang'an's cultivation had been slow in the past was not just because his talent was poor. It was also because he lacked cultivation resources. Without resources like elixir pills and spirit medicine, One's cultivation speed could never be fast relying solely on absorbing the heaven and earth spiritual chi. I'll go find that jade scroll first thing in the morning. Chang'an suppressed his excitement and did not plan to go look for it now. The mountain forests are extremely dangerous at night. Many demon beasts prefer to hunt at night. Although he was desperate to get the jade scroll, he still prioritized caution above all else. My life is what's most important. Chang'an closed his eyes slightly and continued to cultivate. The night passed without incident. When he opened his eyes again, the morning light outside was brilliant. He immediately left, slinging a basket over his back and grabbing his axe before hurrying to the forest where he usually gathered firewood. This time his luck was good. He had only been chopping wood for about 10 minutes when he saw a fox den. The den was filled with a large pile of debris, twigs, dry grass, and leaves, and tucked among it all was the jade scroll described in the divination. Found it. Chang'an's eyes lit up as he reached out and took it. He quickly browsed the contents of the jade scroll and immediately beamed with joy. It really is a talismanic inheritance. Although it's only a Tier 1 low-grade inheritance, it's enough for now. Chapter 4 Heavy Casualties. The inheritance is mine. Chang'an didn't dare to linger outside and immediately returned to the marketplace. He only felt at ease after returning to his room and shutting the door. He began to carefully examine the contents of the jade scroll. Spirit Shield Talisman, Cold Wind Talisman, Mad Blade Talisman. All the low-grade talismans included in this inheritance were of the most common variety. Finding buyers for these would be no trouble at all. The more Chang'an read, the more delighted he became. He took a few deep breaths to calm himself, then sat cross-legged, preparing to begin his serious study of the path of talismans and seals. But just then, a voice suddenly called out from outside. "Brother Li, are you home?" It was Su Fugui's voice, and it sounded somewhat weak. Chang'an got up to open the door. Outside, Su Fugui's face was ghastly pale, completely drained of color. He looked completely disheveled, leaning on a crutch with what appeared to be a lame leg. Seeing his state, Chang'an immediately asked, "Fugui, what happened?" "Brother Li, I should have listened to you." With a face full of misery, Su Fugui recounted his group's experience inside the cave. At first, everything had gone smoothly. Working together, they had managed to break through the already damaged array. They successfully entered the cave. However, there was no treasure inside the cave at all. Instead, they found an even more concealed array. Completely oblivious, they all walked right into it. Then the array suddenly detonated. The group suffered heavy casualties. 4 of them died on the spot. 2 more were so severely injured that they died on the way back. Su Fugui was one of the lucky ones. He hadn't lost his life, but his internal organs had taken a blow, and one of his legs was now lame. "Brother Li, if only I'd listened to you and stayed away from that cave." Su Fugui was consumed by regret. That cave wasn't some fortuitous opportunity, it was a death trap. His injuries were severe. The mere thought of the spirit stones he'd have to spend on healing made his heart bleed. Hearing this, Chang'an sighed and offered a few words of comfort. "The important thing is you're alive. Focus on your recovery." After a bit more conversation, a vexed Su Fugui limped away. His miserable state only strengthened Chang'an's resolve to pursue a path of steady, cautious cultivation. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I must never explore unknown caves, ancient ruins, or anything of the sort. Chang'an closed the door, calmed his mind, and resumed his study of talismans. That night at midnight, the new divination appeared. Divination refreshed. Today's divination, neutral. You will have little to gain today. Nothing of note will occur within or without the marketplace. A quiet day. Chang'an felt at peace. He was already more than satisfied with his recent gains. He wasn't some son of destiny, after all. He couldn't expect great fortune to strike every single day. As long as it's not an evil trigram, I'm good. Chang'an preferred peaceful days. Over the next while, he immersed himself in the world of talismans, hardly ever stepping outside. His daily divinations were all neutral, and nothing of consequence happened. In cultivation, time flows by unnoticed. A month passed in the blink of an eye. One day, Chang'an sat before a low table, his expression focused, a talisman brush in his hand. He had purchased the talisman brush in the marketplace. It was only tier 1 low grade, the cheapest available, yet it had still cost him a full 30 spirit stones. If he hadn't accepted Zheng Jinbao's spirit stones, he never would have been able to afford it. He had used the remaining spirit stones to buy talisman paper and spiritual ink. Today, I'll see if I can finally paint a complete talisman. Li Chang'an focused his full attention and began attempting to paint a light body talisman. Among tier 1 low-grade talismans, this one was relatively easy to paint. Its effect was also extremely simple. It made the user's body lighter. The delicate bristles of the brush glided across the talisman paper, leaving elegant, flowing strokes in its wake. Before long, Li Chang'an's arm paused, and the talisman brush came to a halt. The talisman on the table was complete. He picked up the talisman and injected a trace of spiritual power to activate it. HUMMM. The light body talisman trembled slightly. Li Chang'an felt his entire body light, as if he were floating like an immortal. Success! A smile appeared on his face. To think he had succeeded on his very first try. The entire process was as smooth as flowing water, without a single hitch. This meant that Li Chang'an had officially become a talisman master. I must have some talent for the path of talismans. Li Chang'an was quite satisfied with his own progress. According to the inheritance he had received, talented cultivators could successfully paint a talisman within weeks or months. Those with poor talent, however, could struggle for years without even mastering the basics. Let's try some other talismans. Riding the wave of his success, Li Chang'an continued to paint. Soon, he had successfully painted 2 more types of tier 1 low-grade talismans, the Spirit Shield Talisman and the Fireball Talisman. It was only when he tried to paint a new kind of talisman that he made a careless mistake and failed. Not bad, the success rate isn't low at all. Li Chang'an was quite satisfied with his success rate. And this was only his first time performing talisman painting. His technique was still unpracticed. Once he became more practiced, his success rate would surely increase significantly. According to the inheritance, talisman painting consumes not only magical power, but also a great deal of mental energy. A normal cultivator in the early stage of qi refining would feel tired and mentally drained after painting just 3 low-grade talismans in a row. However, Li Chang'an felt no fatigue whatsoever. He was still full of vigor and brimming with energy. Perhaps because he had lived 2 lives, his spiritual power was far stronger than that of other cultivators at his level. He estimated that his spiritual power was probably on par with that of a cultivator in the middle stage of qi refining. He proceeded to paint more than 10 talismans in a row. Only then did he finally begin to feel a hint of fatigue. I'm still not at my limit, but I shouldn't overexert myself. Li Chang'an set down his talisman brush and rubbed his brow. After meditating for a moment to recover, he put away all the talismans and began his daily cultivation exercises. That evening, Li Chang'an left his room and headed to a shop called the 100 Treasures Pavilion. The 100 Treasures Pavilion was a long-established shop in the marketplace. The shopkeeper, a man with the surname Xianxia, was known for being amiable and had a good reputation. Li Chang'an walked into the shop. He took out a fireball talisman and handed it to Manager Xianxia behind the counter. Manager Xianxia, what do you offer for a talisman like this? Let me see. Manager Xianxia picked up the talisman and looked it over for a moment. Tier 1 low grade, a fireball talisman. The quality is decent, nothing special. As for the price, how about 2 spirit stones? He commented nonchalantly, offering a fair price. Li Chang'an wasn't some rookie new to the cultivation immortality realm. He had a basic understanding of talisman prices, and knew Manager Xianxia's offer was reasonable. He took out 2 more fireball talismans, 3 wind blade talismans, and 4 spirit shield talismans. Bringing the total to 10, he sold them all to Manager Xianxia. 20 spirit stones just like that. Li Chang'an was overjoyed. Now that he had learned a trade, he was earning spirit stones far faster than ever before. Of course, this was mainly because talismans were in high demand. Among the 100 skills of cultivation immortality, pills, talismans, artifacts, and arrays ranked as the top 4. The speed at which one could earn spirit stones with the other skills could hardly compare. Manager Xianxia, I'll take 2 bottles of qi-nourishing pills. Li Chang'an pointed to the elixir pills displayed on a shelf behind the counter. Qi nourishing pills were one of the most suitable elixir pills for early-stage Qi refining cultivators. A single bottle cost 5 spirit stones. In the past, he could never have afforded them. Now he could finally give them a try. Chapter 5 Hometone Gathering. After buying 2 bottles of Qi nourishing pills, Li Chang'an left the 100 Treasures Pavilion. Back in his room, he tipped out a round elixir pill and swallowed it. A dense spiritual power dissolved, spreading through his limbs and bones in an instant. Li Chang'an immediately began circulating his cultivation technique. About a quarter of an hour later, he slowly exhaled, feeling the increase in his magical power, and let out a heartfelt sigh. On the path of cultivation immortality, resources are just too important. A single elixir pill could replace a long period of bitter cultivation. If he'd had elixir pills to aid him over the past 10 years, he might have broken through to the middle stage of Qi refining long ago. For the next half a month, Li Chang'an alternated between using elixir pills to aid his cultivation and painting talismans. As time went on, his talisman painting skills grew more and more refined. He almost never failed anymore. It's about time I tried making a high-quality talisman. Li Chang'an mused. Talismans were divided into ordinary and high-quality grades. The talismans he had painted before were all of ordinary quality, which was why Manager Qian had described them as unremarkable. A high-quality talisman possessed greater power than an ordinary one and was also more expensive. Li Chang'an regulated his breathing and rested for a moment. Just as he was about to make an attempt, Su Fugui suddenly arrived. After this period of recuperation, his injuries had healed considerably. He had come looking for Li Chang'an today to share some news. "Brother Li, have you heard?" "Heard what?" "That guy Chu Denyu got lucky. He actually obtained the inheritance for a low-grade skill." "Oh?" Li Chang'an was slightly taken aback. "Looks like I'm not the only lucky one," he thought. This was normal, though. Everyone had their own opportunities. What kind of inheritance? The skill inheritance for brewing spirit wine. Among the 100 skills of cultivation immortality, wine brewing was considered mid-tier. Spirit wine wasn't a necessity for cultivators. Although it couldn't compare to talismans, it was still quite good. After all, not everyone could obtain a skill inheritance. Su Fugui was quite envious. He also yearned for a skill of his own, but had never been able to acquire one. "By the way, Brother Li, it's been 10 years since we came to the marketplace. Chu Danyu is inviting a few of us from our hometown for a get-together. He said it's his treat." A get-together? Li Chang'an thought for a moment. He hadn't gone out in a long time. It was probably a good idea to see his friends and catch up. Sometimes, having more friends meant having more options. "I'll go as long as the divination is normal." "When is it?" "Tomorrow evening at Yunlai Restaurant." "All right, I'll be there." After chatting for a moment, Su Fugui said his goodbyes. Li Chang'an closed the door to his room. He took out the talisman paper and spiritual ink again, and began his attempt at making a high-quality talisman. He focused his mind, his gaze intent. His arm moved slowly and steadily, gradually tracing the patterns onto the talisman paper. Before long, Li Chang'an stopped. He looked at the half-finished product on his desk and shook his head slightly. A failure. He wasn't discouraged. It was his first try, after all. Success or failure were both within his expectations. After regulating his breath for about the time it takes an incense stick to burn, he gripped the talisman brush tightly and began his second attempt. This time, everything went smoothly. Success. A slight smile touched Li Chang'an's lips as he picked up the talisman from his desk. A high-quality Mad Blade talisman. Its power was greater than that of an ordinary Mad Blade talisman. Although it was still a low-grade talisman, it could now pose a slight threat to a cultivator at the middle stage of Qi refining. Li Chang'an didn't consider selling this kind of talisman for now. The spirit stones he earned from selling ordinary talismans were already enough to cover his basic cultivation needs. He planned to keep the high-quality talismans for his own use. "I need to create a full set of high-quality talismans, mainly covering the 3 aspects of attack, defense, and escape." Li Chang'an had long had a plan. He already carried a full set of ordinary talismans, and his combat strength far exceeded what it used to be. He was considered extremely strong among loose cultivators at the early stage of qi refining. Once he had a complete set of high-quality talismans, he would have some confidence even when facing a cultivator at the middle stage of qi refining. Of course, he would never fight an enemy of a higher cultivation stage unless it was absolutely necessary. Fighting and killing is no good. If I absolutely have to fight, I'll just bully someone with a lower cultivation level than me, preferably much lower. Li Chang'an thought to himself. After regulating his breath for a moment, he picked up his brush again and started on the next talisman. Time slowly passed. Before he knew it, it was midnight again. The divination refreshed. It still showed neutral, no worries but no joy either. Good, no major problems. Li Chang'an's mind was at ease, and he decided to attend the get-together the next evening. The next day at dusk, in a private room on the second floor of Yunlai restaurant, Li Chang'an arrived on time. Including him, there were only 4 people at this gathering. The other 3 were Su Fugui, Chu Danyu, and Sun Yulan, all of whom came from the same mortal country. Originally, there were more than 4 of them, but several others had passed away due to various mishaps. 10 years of cultivation immortality, and more than half of my old friends are already gone. Li Chang'an sighed softly. The cultivation immortality realm was fraught with danger. You never knew whether tomorrow or an accident would arrive first. The 4 of them grew sentimental as they spoke of their departed friends. Afterward, they began to talk about their recent situations. The 4 of them had all been more or less the same. But now, Chu Danyu had a skill to his name. He was no longer an ordinary loose cultivator. The topic of conversation gradually shifted to focus on Chu Danyu. Big Bull, I'm so envious of you, Su Fugui said sincerely. If nothing unexpected happened, the gap between them would only grow wider in the future. It was just a stroke of good luck. Chu Danyu smiled with composure. He had originally been a simple farm boy. 10 years ago, Li Chang'an had been leading Su Fugui and the others on a quest to seek immortality when they passed through his village. He had resolutely decided to join their group, and in the end, his wish was granted. He became a cultivator, a lofty immortal in the eyes of mortals. Now he had even acquired a skill, and his status had surpassed that of an ordinary loose cultivator. His demeanor had also changed quite a bit. There was a newfound sense of calm in his speech and mannerisms. Big Bull, you'll have to look out for us from now on, Sun Yulan, the only woman among the 4, said with a light laugh. She had originally been a fisherman's daughter. Back then, due to her striking looks, she had caught the eye of a local tyrant. The tyrant wanted to marry her, and when he saw she was unwilling, he prepared to take her by force. At the critical moment, Li Chang'an happened to be passing by. Seeing the situation, he intervened and killed the tyrant in 3 punches. After that, she too joined the group seeking immortality. They came to the marketplace together, and she had remained here ever since. Brother Chang'an, you shouldn't stay cooped up in your room all day. You should get out more. Maybe you'll run into an opportunity of your own. Sun Yulan's gaze shifted to Li Chang'an, a mix of complicated emotions stirring in her heart. Back then, Li Chang'an had been the big brother to them all. He had always been at the forefront, shielding them from the wind and rain, leading them over mountains and across ridges, overcoming countless difficulties, and ultimately helping them all find their path to immortality. At that time, Li Chang'an's image in her heart had been towering. It was as if there was nothing in the world he couldn't do. Towards Li Chang'an, she held a flicker of indescribable affection in her heart. But now, Sun Yulan had long since understood. The omnipotent brother Chang'an from her memories was just another ordinary loose cultivator among countless others. The innocent feelings of her youth had been gradually washed away by time. Looking at his ordinary appearance, Sun Yulan let out a quiet sigh in her heart. Alas, the Li Chang'an of today had faded into the crowd. With his poor talent and unwillingness to venture out and take risks, he was destined to never achieve much in this life. Chapter 6 Talismans display their might. The feast lasted for a full hour. After the feast ended, Chu Danyu had drunk a little too much and was already tipsy. Brother Li, you took good care of me back when we were searching for the path to immortality. He slung an arm over Li Chang'an's shoulder as they walked out of the restaurant. If you ever need help with anything in the future, just say the word. As long as it's something I can do, I'll definitely help you. All right, Li Chang'an replied with a smile. Soon, the four of them bid each other farewell and went their separate ways back to their homes. In the days that followed, Li Chang'an spent his time honing his talisman painting skills. He grew more and more proficient at creating high-quality talismans, and his success rate gradually increased. During this time, King Marketplace was anything but peaceful. Several murders had occurred, all committed by tribulation cultivators. Panic spread throughout the marketplace. Many of the wealthier cultivators began to consider leaving Chang'an Marketplace, intending to find a safer residence on a spirit vein. This infuriated the Zheng family. Not only did they increase the intensity of their patrols, but they also issued a bounty, vowing to find the murderous tribulation cultivators. Tribulation cultivators. Li Chang'an also felt a hint of crisis. He definitely didn't want to be targeted by them. After all, his strength was still too weak. At the early stage of chi refining, he was just small fry in the cultivation immortality realm. Fortunately, he had already successfully created a full set of high-quality talismans, and his strength had greatly increased compared to before. A few days later, a new piece of news spread through the marketplace. The tribulation cultivators are a gang. The Zheng family has already killed their leader, who was at the late stage of chi refining. Only a few members at the middle and early stages are left in hiding. This news put Li Chang'an somewhat at ease. In the days that followed, the tribulation cultivators indeed quieted down, and peace returned to King Marketplace. 2 months passed. Li Chang'an's talisman painting skill was now polished to near perfection. I basically never fail when drawing high-quality talismans anymore. No one could guarantee a 100% success rate. His current skill level could be considered the peak for a Tier 1 low-grade talisman master. It's a pity I don't have the next part of the inheritance. Li Chang'an sighed. He had already completely mastered all the content within the Jade Scroll. Lately, he had been keeping an eye out for any news about talismanic inheritances in the marketplace. However, there was very little news, not just about talismans, but even about inheritances for other common skills. Oh well, I can't force it. Li Chang'an was still quite satisfied with his current situation. He slowly set down the talisman brush in his hand, stood up and stretched. Ever since obtaining the talismanic inheritance, he had barely rested, foregoing food and sleep to study and hone his talisman drawing skill. The path of cultivation should have a balance between tension and relaxation, work and rest. Li Chang'an decided to relax for a bit. He couldn't stay so tense for long periods. Cultivators are people too, not puppets. He took out some biographies of powerful cultivators, reading about the lives of these experts to strengthen his own conviction for cultivation immortality. Night deepened, and it was midnight once again. Divination has been refreshed. Today's divination, Auspicious. You decide to relax your mind and go fishing at Bright Moon Lake. You unexpectedly obtain a Tier 1 middle-grade talismanic inheritance from the belly of a fish. A middle-grade talismanic inheritance. Li Chang'an's spirits lifted. He had just been worrying about not having the next part of the inheritance, and the divination had given him a clue. This is perfect timing. Bright Moon Lake. It's not far from King Marketplace, and cultivators often go there to fish. Information about Bright Moon Lake surfaced in Li Chang'an's mind. From the marketplace to Bright Moon Lake, a round trip only took a quarter of an hour. Looks like I'll have to test my fishing skills. The next morning, Li Chang'an took his fishing rod, prepared his bait, and set off to go fishing. Before long, he arrived at the shores of Bright Moon Lake. Looking out from a distance, the lake's surface was calm, and a few cultivators were angling. Li Chang'an chose a secluded spot, first scattering a handful of bait before casting his line. Then he held the fishing rod as still as an old monk in meditation. About a quarter of an hour later, the first fish took the bait. Splash! Li Chang'an yanked it out of the water. He flicked a finger, sending out a strand of spiritual power to slice open the fish's belly, and inspected it carefully. He didn't find anything unusual. He remained patient, waiting for the next fish. Over the next hour, he caught 5 more fish in succession, but none of them had the inheritance in their bellies. A short while later, another fish was on the hook. Li Chang'an sliced open its belly as usual, and his eyes suddenly lit up. A jade scroll. Inside this fish's belly was, to his surprise, a jade scroll. He took out the jade scroll and gave its contents a quick scan. The Tier 1 middle-grade talismanic inheritance. Chang'an was thrilled. He had obtained it without any effort at all. After a moment, he packed up his fishing gear, picked up his fish basket, and started on the road back to the marketplace. If nothing unexpected happened, he would be back at the marketplace in about 7 minutes. However, halfway there, he suddenly heard the urgent sound of something whistling through the air not far away. Something's wrong. It sounds like people are fighting. A chill went down Chang'an's spine. The sound was rapidly approaching him. He quickly activated a chi concealment talisman. He suppressed his aura to its absolute minimum. Then he ducked into a nearby bush, remaining as still as a stone. A few breaths later, a blood-soaked figure shot past the bush. It was Chu Daniel. His aura was weak. He was clearly heavily injured. Behind him, two ferocious-looking cultivators were in hot pursuit. Jai. Chu Daniel stopped resisting. Hand over all your valuables and your spirit wine inheritance, and we brothers might consider sparing your life. The two men cackled, their auras both at the peak of the third layer of chi refining. But Chu Daniel had only just recently advanced to the third layer of chi refining. Even a one-on-one fight would have been troublesome, let alone one against two. How could Big Bull be so unlucky to actually run into tribulation cultivators? Chang'an's brow furrowed slightly. Those two cultivators were, in fact, on the bounty list issued by the Zhang family. He observed for a moment and saw that there was no one else behind the two men. He then activated a light body talisman, a wind speed talisman, a divine step talisman, and others. His body became as light as a wisp of gentle wind as he silently followed behind them. A few more breaths later, Chu Daniel's aura grew even weaker, and his body swayed. Thud. He fell headfirst to the ground. No. Chu Daniel's face was ashen. They were still some distance from the marketplace. But he was too heavily injured. He couldn't make it back. Is my cultivation journey going to end here? Sorrow filled Chu Daniel's heart. He had finally managed to acquire a skill. His life was just about to get better, yet he was going to fall here. Jai. Chu Daniel, hurry up and hand over your treasures. The two tribulation cultivators closed in, their laughter as grating as a night owl's screech. Chu Daniel was already in despair. But just then, two streaks of golden light suddenly flashed, slicing across the necks of the two tribulation cultivators. Ambush. The two reacted instantly. But before they could make a move, their two heads tumbled from their necks. Blood gushed out, and the two headless bodies collapsed in unison. Dead. Chu Daniel's eyes widened in utter disbelief. Chapter 7, Chu Daniel's shock. Thank you for saving my life, Senior. Chu Daniel shouted, enduring the pain of his injuries. In his eyes, any cultivator who could kill two tribulation cultivators in a single strike had to be a master at the middle stage of chi refining, or perhaps even the late stage. But in the next moment, he saw a familiar figure. Brother Li. Chu Daniel was stunned for a moment. He thought his injuries were so severe that his vision had blurred. With a serious expression, Chang'an flicked a pill into Chu Daniel's mouth. Big Bull, don't just stand there gawking. Meditate and recover from your injuries now. Brother Li, is it really you? Chu Daniel murmured in disbelief. In that instant, he had considered many possibilities, but Chang'an was never one of them. Chang'an, his face grim, took the two tribulation cultivators' storage pouches. After confirming they had nothing else on them, he slapped out two fireball talismans in quick succession. With two booms, two scorching blazes erupted, engulfing the tribulation cultivators' corpses. As for the tribulation cultivators' heads, Chang'an didn't burn them. Instead, he tossed them into his fish basket and covered them with a gray cloth. These two are on the Zhang family's bounty list. With their heads as proof, I might be able to completely break free from the Zhang family's spirit contract and become a truly free loose cultivator. The moment he had decided to act, Chang'an already had a plan. Although the Zhang family's young miss had allowed him to do nothing for the next 5 years. It was, after all, only a verbal promise. He was still bound by the Zhang family's spirit contract. What if something unexpected happens to the Zhang family one day, and they need a large number of loose cultivators as cannon fodder? The possibility was slim, but he had to be prepared. After taking care of everything, Li Chang'an looked at Chu Daniel. "Big Bull, how are you now? Can you move on your own?" Chu Daniel opened his mouth, still in shock. But he quickly came to his senses and assessed his condition. That pill just now was very effective. "Brother Li, I can just about move." His face was still pale as he struggled to support himself and stand up. This was no place to linger. The two immediately hurried toward the marketplace. On the way, Chu Daniel explained why he had been ambushed. Earlier that morning, he had received a contract for some spirit wine. The client had asked him to deliver it to a manor outside the marketplace. Without a second thought, he had set out with the spirit wine. But he was ambushed halfway there. I should have realized something was wrong, but the marketplace has been so peaceful lately, I let my guard down. Chu Daniel was filled with regret. The contract had specified a large quantity of wine, making it a big deal. And he had been too eager to earn spirit stones, letting greed cloud his judgment. If Li Chang'an hadn't intervened, he would have lost his life right here. Thinking back to the scene of Li Chang'an taking action, Chu Daniel still found it incredible. "Brother Li, was that golden light just now a talisman?" "Yes." Li Chang'an didn't deny it. After getting an affirmative answer, Chu Daniel calmed down a little. After all, it was the power of a talisman, not his own strength. A moment later, Chu Daniel's body suddenly trembled as he thought of something even more unbelievable. "Brother Li, have you become a talisman master?" "Why do you ask?" Li Chang'an glanced at him and asked in return. "Couldn't I have just bought the talismans?" "Brother Li, you just used 2 fireball talismans to dispose of their bodies. That's such a waste. You could have just lit a fire and burned them." 2 fireball talismans, that's a full 4 spirit stones. What ordinary loose cultivator would dare be so wasteful? It was for this very reason that Chu Daniel concluded that Li Chang'an must have become a talisman master. Li Chang'an nodded slightly. "Yes, you guessed correctly. You really are a talisman master." Chu Daniel's eyes went wide, as if he were meeting Li Chang'an for the very first time. Even though he had been mentally prepared for it, he was still completely stunned. The path of talismans and seals. Among the 100 skills of cultivation immortality, it ranked far above his own spirit wine brewing. In terms of status, a talisman master was also far superior to a brewer. I got so smug just from obtaining a spirit wine inheritance, I wanted the whole world to know. But you, Brother Li, learned how to make talismans long ago and never said a word. Comparing the two of them, Chu Daniel couldn't help but feel ashamed. Those 2 tribulation cultivators knew he had a spirit wine inheritance. They must have been targeting him for a while. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment attack. If he had just been a bit more low-key, perhaps today's disaster could have been avoided. Chu Daniel made a decision. "From now on, I'll follow Li Chang'an's example in everything I do. I'll prioritize caution and never take unnecessary risks." The two continued toward the marketplace as they talked. Soon the marketplace was in sight. "We're finally back." Chu Daniel breathed a sigh of relief. Just then, a patrol of Zheng family cultivators spotted them and approached. The leader, a man named Zheng Yunting, was an expert at the middle stage of qi refining. He shouted to Chu Daniel, "What happened? Why are you covered in blood?" "Senior, we were attacked by tribulation cultivators." Seeing the patrol of cultivators, Chu Daniel finally relaxed completely and recounted the entire incident from beginning to end. After hearing his story, the Zheng family cultivators were all somewhat surprised. "You killed the 2 tribulation cultivators?" Zheng Yunting looked at Li Chang'an. Li Chang'an nodded immediately, lifted the blood-soaked gray cloth, and took out the 2 tribulation cultivators' heads. "Senior, I was lucky. I happened to be carrying a mad blade talisman and had the element of surprise." "Well done." Zheng Yunting praised him, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "It doesn't matter if it was a sneak attack or not. The fact that you could kill them is a testament to your ability." He then took the 2 heads from Li Chang'an's hands. According to the previously issued bounty, Li Chang'an was due a very handsome reward. He asked, "Senior, is it possible to change the contents of the reward?" "Oh?" Zheng Yunting was taken aback. "What reward do you want?" "Senior, I wish to be released from my spirit contract and become a free man." "This?" Zhang Yunting pondered for a moment. That's not my decision to make. I'm only in charge of patrols. The young miss handles matters concerning spirit contracts. I can take you to her, but whether or not you succeed will be up to your luck. Thank you, Senior. Li Chang'an felt a surge of joy and cupped his hands in thanks. That young miss is extremely intelligent, understanding, and quite approachable. This should be a sure thing. Before long, Zhang Yunting led the two to the 100 Affairs Hall in the center of the marketplace, the place where the Zhang family handled the city's business. He went in first to announce their arrival, then led the two into the main hall. Zhang Qingqing was in the hall, dressed in a long bluish-green gown. Her long hair fell to her waist, and her features were as beautiful as a painting. When she saw Li Chang'an, a flicker of surprise crossed her beautiful eyes. Li Chang'an, it really is you. Greetings, young miss. Li Chang'an bowed slightly, his attitude deferential. Zhang Qingqing smiled, her tone gentle. I've told you before, there's no need to be so formal with me. She had already learned what happened from Zhang Yunting. That was why she was a little surprised. After all, according to the information she had on him, Li Chang'an's strength was completely unremarkable. He should have been no match for two tribulation cultivators. Chapter 8 Taking Stock of the Harvest. Zhang Qingqing's fine brows arched slightly. She sized up Li Chang'an once more. It hadn't been long since they last met. Li Chang'an still had that same cautious and meticulous demeanor. I heard that you were able to kill those two tribulation cultivators because you used talismans to launch a sneak attack, catching them completely off guard. That's right, Li Chang'an answered truthfully. The whole process sounded perfectly normal. But Zhang Qingqing knew very well. Not everyone had the courage to act when faced with two vicious and cruel tribulation cultivators. Many cultivators would just hide, not daring to intervene even if their own friends were being attacked and killed by the tribulation cultivators. With Li Chang'an's cautious and prudent nature, he must have been thoroughly prepared before deciding to step in and save someone. In other words, Li Chang'an's trump cards amounted to far more than just two mad blade talismans. But how could an ordinary loose cultivator have enough spirit stones to prepare so many trump cards? Either he'd had a great stroke of fortune, or he was hiding some kind of skill for earning spirit stones. Zhang Qingqing's thoughts shifted and she asked him directly, Li Chang'an, are you a talisman master? Young miss, your intelligence is extraordinary. I couldn't hide it from you. Li Chang'an offered a compliment, his tone utterly sincere. Zhang Qingqing gave a faint, beautiful smile, seemingly pleased by the compliment. The look in her eyes changed subtly. Originally in her eyes, Li Chang'an was just an insignificant passerby. But now, Li Chang'an, with his skill in talisman painting, was worthy of her serious consideration. You want to end the spirit contract early and regain your freedom? Zhang Qingqing asked in a soft voice. Li Chang'an nodded. Young miss, would that be difficult? Don't worry, it's a simple matter. Zhang Qingqing summoned a maid and gave her a few instructions. The maid hurried away. Before long, she returned with a spirit contract. It was the very spirit contract Li Chang'an had signed with the Zhang family all those years ago. This spirit contract placed immense restrictions on Li Chang'an. If he ever went against the Zhang family's wishes, he would suffer a backlash. At best, he would be injured. At worst, he would die. He couldn't terminate the spirit contract unilaterally, but the Zhang family could. Next, Zhang Qingqing raised a slender hand. A faint light flashed from her fair fingers as she gently wiped them over the two words of his name, Li Chang'an, at the end of the spirit contract. There, Zhang Qingqing said with a smile. On the spirit contract, Li Chang'an's name slowly vanished, leaving only a blank space, as if it had never been there. He instantly felt a lightness spread through his entire body. It was as if some shackles had been unlocked. He felt reborn, and even his soul was at ease. Thank you, young miss. Li Chang'an was overjoyed and hurriedly expressed his thanks. Zhang Qingqing smiled, pursing her lips. You eliminated two tribulation cultivators for my Zhang family. This is what you deserve. From now on, Li Chang'an and the Zhang family were even. They owed each other nothing. He would deal with the Zhang family anew, but this time as a loose cultivator and talisman master. A while later, Li Chang'an and Chu Danyu left the 100 Affairs Hall. Chu Danyu's spirit contract was not terminated. After all, he hadn't been the one to kill the tribulation cultivators. He only received 2 bottles of healing elixir pills. Even so, he was extremely grateful. The young miss is such a good person. She's beautiful and kind, without any of the arrogance of noble family descendants. I wonder who will be fortunate enough to marry her one day. Chu Danyu clutched the elixir pills, sighing with genuine emotion. In fact, many young cultivators in the marketplace secretly admired Zhang Qingqing. After all, whether in terms of status or cultivation talent, she was someone most loose cultivators could only look up to. Li Chang'an smiled and glanced at Chu Danyu. Big Bull, just focus on healing, don't overthink things. You're right, brother Li. Chu Danyu scratched his head. He wouldn't dare to hope for anything like that. Afterward, the two parted ways and returned to their respective rooms. Li Chang'an closed his door and took out the 2 tribulation cultivators' storage pouches. I can finally check out the spoils of war. A smile appeared on his face. His mood was excellent. Taking action this time, though a bit risky, had been completely worth it. Not having a storage pouch was always inconvenient, but that's not a problem anymore. 2 storage pouches were enough for Li Chang'an to store his necessities. He spent some effort breaking the restriction the 2 tribulation cultivators had placed on the storage pouches. After opening the pouches and seeing what was inside, his mood improved even more. The spirit stones from both pouches add up to over 100. There are 5 bottles of Qi nourishing pills, 3 bottles of Qi recovery pills, and some other elixir pills for healing and calming the mind. A smile touched Li Chang'an's lips as he picked up the vials one by one to identify them. Besides the elixir pills, there were also various Tier 1 low-grade spirit medicines, mostly for healing, and quite a lot of them. There were also 2 magical artifacts, a meteor hammer and a great axe, both Tier 1 low-grade magical artifacts, and more than 10 Tier 1 low-grade talismans, plus 3 Tier 1 middle-grade talismans, all for self-defense. Li Chang'an picked up a talisman, feeling secretly relieved. It was a good thing he had launched a sneak attack, and succeeded in one blow. Those 2 tribulation cultivators never even had a chance to activate their talismans. In the future, if I have to fight, I should use a sneak attack whenever possible, even against those with lower cultivation than me. Li Chang'an warned himself, then continued to take inventory. Finally, he made a rough calculation. The total value of the items in the storage pouches exceeded 300 spirit stones. Furthermore, each of the 2 storage pouches themselves was worth over 100 spirit stones. As expected of tribulation cultivators, they were quite wealthy. Li Chang'an mused to himself. How could an ordinary early-stage Qi refining cultivator have so many spirit stones? Then again, it made sense. The business of murder and arson has always been extremely profitable. Even though it's fast money, the risk is huge and it's too vicious. I'd better just stick to talisman painting. Li Chang'an put everything away and took out the inheritance Jade scroll he had previously obtained from the fish's belly. He began to study the art of creating Tier 1 middle-grade talismans. That evening, Steward Zheng Jinbao came to visit. Chang'an, it's me, are you home? His voice was a bit more enthusiastic than last time. Li Chang'an got up to open the door. He saw Zheng Jinbao standing outside, his face wreathed in smiles. Steward Zheng, what can I do for you? Li Chang'an asked calmly, his expression as neutral as ever. Zheng Jinbao chuckled. Chang'an, you really know how to hide your skills. To think you quietly became a talisman master. You know, talisman painting is a great test of talent. He praised Li Chang'an's talent for a few moments. Then he stated his purpose for coming. The young miss asked me to inform you that even though your spirit contract with our Zheng family has been terminated, the house you're living in now still belongs to you. Oh, I don't need to rent it. Li Chang'an was slightly surprised. The house he was living in had been assigned to him by the Zheng family. After all, according to the spirit contract he had signed, the Zheng family was required to provide them with a spiritual land for cultivation. Chang'an Marketplace was built on a Tier 2 spirit vein, making it an excellent place to cultivate. But now that the spirit contract was terminated, Li Chang'an would either have to spend spirit stones to rent a house like any other ordinary loose cultivator, or leave the marketplace. Of course, he was a talisman master now, so he could certainly afford the spirit stones to rent a house. Zhang Jinbao smiled and shook his head. Chang'an, the young miss said that since you've worked for the Zhang family for so many years, you're practically one of the family. As long as you remain in Chang'an Marketplace, this house is yours. I see. An ordinary cultivator probably wouldn't receive such good treatment, Li Chang'an considered. The special treatment I'm getting must be because of my status as a talisman master. This was a good thing that had fallen right into his lap. He did not refuse. The path of cultivation was impossible without spirit stones, so saving even a little was for the best. Chapter 9 A Change in Mentality. After a brief conversation, Zhang Jinbao said he had other business and turned to leave. Once he was a good distance away, he wiped the smile from his face. Damn my luck, how did that brat become a talisman master? Zhang Jinbao couldn't help but feel irritated. In the past, he had relied on his status to wantonly bully many of the cultivators who had signed a spirit contract with the Zhang family. Almost all of those cultivators had bleak prospects, with little hope of turning their fortunes around. Even when they suffered unjust treatment, they could only endure it in silence. Because of this, he had lived a stable life all these years without any mishaps. Who could have expected an anomaly like Li Chang'an to suddenly appear? That brat is cunning and scheming. He most likely still holds a grudge. Zhang Jinbao's expression turned grim, a faint unease stirring in his heart. The Li Chang'an of today was no longer someone he could easily manipulate. He was afraid that Li Chang'an would one day come seeking revenge. No, I can't just sit here and wait for my doom. Zhang Jinbao clenched his jaw, a vicious glint flashing in his eyes. He hadn't secured his position as steward just by relying on his status as one of the Zhang clan members. He had all sorts of methods at his disposal. At this thought he paused, then headed off in a different direction. For the next month, Li Chang'an barely left his home, wholeheartedly dedicating himself to middle-grade talismans. The difficulty of middle-grade talismans far exceeded that of low-grade talismans. Even after studying for a whole month, he still didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. Tier 1 middle-grade talismans not only have incredibly complex painting techniques, but the demands on one's magical power and spiritual power are also extremely strict. Li Chang'an thought to himself, under normal circumstances, only the magical power and spiritual power of a middle-stage chi refining cultivator would be enough to support the painting of a Tier 1 middle-grade talisman. Li Chang'an's advantage lay in his spiritual power, which was stronger than that of other cultivators at the same stage. As for his magical power, he now had elixir pills to aid his training, so his cultivation speed was faster than before, but he was still some distance away from the chi refining fourth layer. A few days later, Su Fugui and Sun Yulan came to visit. Brother Li, when did you become a talisman master? Why didn't you tell us? It's not a big deal, not worth mentioning. Li Chang'an chuckled lightly. The news of him becoming a talisman master and killing the tribulation cultivator hadn't spread. Only a very small number of people knew. The two of them hadn't known either. Today, they had gone to see Chu Danyu about something and discovered he was injured. After some questioning, they learned the truth. Upon learning that Li Chang'an had become a talisman master, their reaction was the same as Chu Danyu's, utter shock. Brother, no wonder you never leave the house, so you've been studying talisman art. Su Fugui's face was full of envy. Sun Yulan's gaze was wistful, her feelings incredibly complex. At their last gathering, she had advised Li Chang'an to go out more, suggesting he might stumble upon some opportunity. She never expected that Li Chang'an had already found his opportunity. The elder brother who had led her on the path to cultivation immortality hadn't faded into mediocrity. He was still as bright and dazzling as ever. Unconsciously, the image of Li Chang'an grew tall in her heart once more. The three of them talked for a long time. It wasn't until evening that Su Fugui and Sun Yulan finally took their leave. They finally left. Li Chang'an planned to continue his study of talisman art. However, not long after, Sun Yulan turned around and came back. This time she was actually wearing light makeup. Her eyebrows were like slender willows, her face like a peach blossom, and she carried a faint, fresh fragrance. Brother Chang'an, may I speak with you in private? Her eyes were like pools of water, her gaze fixed on Li Chang'an's face. Li Chang'an's brow furrowed slightly. Yulan, is there something else? Brother Chang'an. Sun Yulan gently bit her red lip, her cheeks flushing. You've been alone for so many years. Have you ever considered taking a wife and starting a family? Take a wife? Li Chang'an immediately shook his head. His face was stern, his expression serious. The cultivation immortality realm is ever-changing. The qi refining stage is like weeds by the roadside, and only foundation establishment cultivators can truly stand firm. I am as insignificant as an ant right now. How could I dare to take a wife and have children? Hearing this, Sun Yulan's expression dimmed. She also understood. Now that Li Chang'an had become a talisman master and could earn cultivation resources, there was indeed a sliver of a chance for him to reach foundation establishment. Perhaps that was why his heart was so set on pursuing the Tao. Sun Yulan couldn't help but feel a little regretful. If she had asked him about this back then, before he became a talisman master, would the outcome have been different? At this thought, she felt an emptiness in her heart. Yulan, it's getting late. You should go back and get some rest. Having lived 2 lives, how could Li Chang'an not see through her intentions? He was well aware. In the past, although this woman had some affection for him, she had never intended to become his Taoist partner, simply because he was too plain and ordinary to meet her expectations. If he hadn't become a talisman master, this conversation would never have happened. Afterward, Sun Yulan probed with a few more questions, but Li Chang'an's attitude remained indifferent. She had no choice but to leave, dejected. Time flew by. Before he knew it, another month had passed. Li Chang'an gradually began to feel a little confident about painting Tier 1 middle-grade talismans. On this day, Chu Danyu came looking for Li Chang'an. After 2 months of recuperation, his injuries had mostly healed. The reason he came to see Li Chang'an was to tell him something. Brother Li, I previously joined a circle of artisans. The cultivators inside all have at least one cultivation immortality technique, and several of them are talisman masters. Chu Danyu explained slowly. As one's status changes, the people one comes into contact with also change. Back then, after the news spread that he had obtained a spirit wine inheritance, someone invited him to join this small circle. A few people inside also knew the skill of brewing spirit wine, and talking with them had been very rewarding for Chu Danyu. Therefore, he planned to invite Li Chang'an to join the circle as well. Brother Li, interacting with other talisman masters might help you break through sooner and learn to paint high-quality talismans. What do you think? Chu Danyu asked. He didn't know that Li Chang'an could already paint high-quality talismans, which was why he said this. A circle of artisans. Li Chang'an mulled it over for a moment. Meeting other talisman masters wasn't a bad thing. Communication between fellow practitioners often leads to mutual encouragement and shared progress. So he agreed. Before long, Chu Danyu took him to attend a gathering of artisans. It was called a gathering, but it was also a small trade fair of sorts. While everyone socialized, they also exchanged needed cultivation resources. The scene was lively, with cultivators chatting and laughing with each other in a harmonious atmosphere. Brother Li, this is Taoist Liu. The first person Chu Danyu introduced to Li Chang'an was a woman. Liu Yue, a 3rd-layer qi refining cultivator. She was also a Tier 1, low-grade talisman master. Taoist Liu, this is my brother Li Chang'an. He's also a talisman master. Chu Danyu then introduced Li Chang'an to her. Liu Yue's eyes flickered, and she sized up Li Chang'an with surprise. Oh, could it be that you only recently became a talisman master? Why haven't I heard of you before? That is indeed the case. Li Chang'an cupped his hands and replied. Chu Danyu held Liu Yue in high regard. Brother Li, Taoist Liu is very talented in the way of talismans. She's only been practicing talisman painting for less than 3 years, and she can already create high-quality talismans. I can only barely manage it, and the success rate is extremely low. Liu Yue chuckled. Her words were modest, but they held a faint hint of pride. Indeed, compared to many old-timer talisman masters, she was considered quite talented. Many talisman masters with low-grade skills spend more than 10 years before they can paint a high-quality talisman. I see, Taoist Liu is truly talented. Li Chang'an said with a smile. He thought for a moment. From the time I started talisman painting to when I could create high-quality talismans, it seems it's only been a little over 3 months. Chapter 10, Peer Exchange. Over 3 months. If word of this got out, it would surely cause a huge uproar. Therefore, during their conversation, Li Chang'an claimed that he had received his talismanic inheritance many years ago. My aptitude is poor, nothing compared to Taoist Liu's. I can only rely on time to slowly grind away. Taoist Li, why must you sell yourself short? Liu Yue gave a gentle smile. The two then began a chat about the path of talismans and seals. During their talk, the level of talisman art Li Chang'an displayed was merely that of an ordinary low-grade talisman master. After talking for about a quarter of an hour, they had become somewhat acquainted. A bit of trust had formed between them. Just then, whether intentionally or not, Liu Yue suddenly mentioned the grade of their inheritances. Unfortunately, I only received a Tier 1 low-grade inheritance, so I can't advance any further. She sighed softly, her delicate brows furrowing slightly. A trace of sorrow appeared on her lovely face, a truly pitiable sight. Li Chang'an sighed with emotion as well and blurted out. Indeed, inheritances are hard to come by. Obtaining a low-grade one is already the greatest fortune of my life. His face was filled with melancholy, as if he too were worried about finding a middle-grade inheritance. Hearing this, Liu Yue lowered her beautiful eyes, a flicker of imperceptible disappointment in their depths. The reason she had been willing to talk with Li Chang'an for so long was to probe him, not simply to discuss talisman art. However, Li Chang'an had noticed this long ago. During their earlier conversation, he had seemed relaxed but was, in fact, on high alert the entire time. The temptation of a Tier 1 middle-grade inheritance was simply too great. He wouldn't dare reveal it without the means to protect himself. I have to at least break through to the middle stage of qi refining before I can reveal my Tier 1 middle-grade skills. Li Chang'an constantly reminded himself that he could not let his guard down. In the conversation that followed, Liu Yue seemed unchanged, but a faint, almost imperceptible distance had grown between them. Afterward, Chu Danyu introduced Li Chang'an to several other talisman masters. As expected, they were all Tier 1 low-grade talisman masters with very ordinary skills. Not a single one of them could compare to Liu Yue. These few people were reasonably polite to Li Chang'an. This must be your first time here, Taoist Li. You must come more often in the future. On the path of talismans and seals, you can't just lock yourself away and reinvent the wheel. We must exchange ideas more often. Of course, this politeness was only superficial. After all, they were both peers and competitors. One more low-grade talisman master in the marketplace meant one more person to compete with for their livelihood. However, these men were quite enthusiastic toward Liu Yue. This was not only because Liu Yue could create high-quality talismans, but also because she was young and beautiful, and still without a Taoist partner. A talisman master with the surname Wu praised, "Taoist Liu, you've mastered the skill of making high-quality talismans in just 3 years of talisman painting. It truly puts me to shame." "Taoist Wu, you flatter me." Liu Yue smiled humbly, her eyes captivating. The others also chimed in with their praise. Li Chang'an sat to the side, a smile on his face, but he felt quite bored inside. This so-called gathering of peers was nothing special. They were all low-grade artisans, they couldn't help him much. Just then, Chu Danyu suddenly whispered a reminder. "Brother Li, Elder Luo Kun is here. He's an expert at the middle stage of qi refining and possesses a Tier 1 middle-grade talismanic inheritance." "Oh?" Li Chang'an was taken aback and followed Chu Danyu's gaze. He soon saw an old man with a ruddy, date-colored face and a full head of white hair and a white beard. He looked to be over 60, and his power surpassed everyone present. He certainly deserved to be called elder. Strange. Among the middle-grade talisman masters in the marketplace, I don't recall there being an elder Luo. Li Chang'an had previously investigated the middle-grade talisman masters in the marketplace. At the time, the divination had not yet given him a sign, so he was still worrying about a Tier 1 middle-grade talismanic inheritance, and had even considered finding a middle-grade talisman master to take him as an apprentice. Chu Danyu immediately explained. Although Elder Luo has a middle-grade inheritance, his skills have not yet broken through. He can currently create high-quality versions of low-grade talismans with a very high success rate. I see. Li Chang'an instantly understood. He was still a Tier 1 low-grade talisman master. But he possessed the inheritance after all. As long as his talent wasn't too poor, a breakthrough was only a matter of time. "Brother Li, Elder Luo has no children and has not taken any disciples. You have to seize this opportunity." Chu Daniel whispered. If he could get on this elder's good side, he might have a chance to obtain the talismanic inheritance he held. The other talisman masters present were thinking the exact same thing. Elder Luo. Liu Yue's eyes lit up, and she immediately rose to greet him. The others did the same. Each of them wore a fawning smile and a respectful expression. Luo Kun's expression was neutral as he gave a slight nod. My young friends, have you all been well? Thank you for your concern, Elder Luo. Liu Yue spoke with a charming smile, her voice taking on a delicate, soft quality. She also edged, intentionally or not, a little closer to Luo Kun. She, who had kept a certain distance from everyone before, was now like a completely different person, looking as if she wanted nothing more than to press right up against him. Soon, Luo Kun came and sat down before the group. His aged gaze swept over Li Chang'an. This young friend looks unfamiliar. Is this your first time here? This junior Li Chang'an greets you, elder. Li Chang'an stood and bowed with his hands clasped. It is indeed my first time here. No need for formalities, sit. Yes. Li Chang'an sat back down. Next, Luo Kun, adopting the air of an elder, had everyone voice their questions about their talisman skills. He, in turn, would be responsible for answering their questions and clearing up their doubts. Elder Luo, I happen to have a question. Liu Yue blinked her beautiful eyes and described a point of confusion she had with talisman painting. The other talisman masters also began to speak up. The questions they asked were all very simple. It seemed like they were asking questions, but in reality, they were using the opportunity to praise Elder Luo as much as they could, hoping to be noticed by him. Elder Luo's talisman art is truly masterful. A question that has puzzled this junior for days was solved with just a single word of your guidance. The talisman master with the surname Wu was full of gratitude. Luo Kun's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he were thoroughly enjoying the compliments. A scene like this made Li Chang'an feel even more bored. This kind of peer exchange was a complete waste of time. He couldn't be bothered to ask a question, so he simply ignored the others' voices and began to ponder his own path of talismans and seals. But Chu Daniel watched this, growing secretly anxious. Why hasn't Brother Li asked a question yet? This is a rare opportunity for exchange. He couldn't help but regret not giving Li Chang'an a few more words of advice beforehand. A moment later, he noticed Luo Kun's gaze sweep over Li Chang'an, his brow furrowing. Chu Daniel's heart sank. He knew that Li Chang'an had most likely blown his chance. The others, however, were secretly delighted. That Li Chang'an is so clueless about social etiquette. They knew very well that they now had one less competitor. About an hour later, the gathering came to an end. Everyone said their goodbyes. Li Chang'an left with Chu Daniel. On the way back, Chu Daniel couldn't help but sigh. Brother Li, why didn't you ask any questions? Li Chang'an just smiled, unconcerned. I suddenly had a moment of insight and got lost in my own thoughts. I wasn't paying attention to my surroundings. Oh, so that's what happened, sigh. Chu Daniel couldn't help but feel it was a pity. Such a rare opportunity, gone just like that. Chapter 11, Talisman Art Advancement Middle Grade Talisman. Most of the artisans in the marketplace only had Tier 1 low-grade skills. How rare were middle-grade skills? This was especially true for the 4 arts of pills, talismans, artifacts, and arrays. In Chang'an Marketplace, talisman masters with middle-grade talisman art either planned to pass their skills down to their descendants or already had apprentices. Elder Luo was an exception, but Brother Li missed his chance. The more Chu Daniel thought about it, the worse he felt. After all, Li Chang'an had saved his life, but he had nothing with which to repay him. After he got back, he made some careful inquiries for a long time. He was surprised to discover that Luo Kun had a fondness for wine. There's still hope. Chu Daniel's eyes lit up. He immediately took several jars of fine wine and ran to the outside of Luo Kun's courtyard, knocking on the gate. This junior Chu Daniel requests to see Elder Luo. The courtyard gate opened. Luo Kun's figure appeared behind it. He glanced casually at Chu Daniel. Ah, it's Anu, I remember you. You're a brewer, aren't you? Yes. This junior lacks confidence in his own brew. I heard you have a great deal of expertise in wine tasting, Elder, so I've come to trouble you for your opinion. As he spoke, a wide smile was plastered on Chu Daniel's face. He presented the few jars of fine wine he he had specially selected. Oh, Luo Kun raised an eyebrow. He casually unsealed a jar, and a rich, fragrant aroma of wine immediately wafted out. It made his nose twitch involuntarily. Not bad. Luo Kun nodded slightly, giving Chu Danyu a second look. All right, spit it out. What do you want from me? Elder, it's like this. Chu Danyu was overjoyed and immediately explained his purpose. After listening, Luo Kun said flatly that Li Chang'an is too rigid and inflexible. He'll have a hard time achieving anything great in the talisman art. Hearing this assessment, Chu Danyu's heart tightened. However, for the sake of these few jars of wine, I can give him a few more pointers next time. Thank you, Elder. Chu Danyu hurriedly expressed his thanks. He secretly decided that he must come by often with wine in the future. Meanwhile, after Li Chang'an returned, he put the day's events out of his mind. I should avoid useless little gatherings like this in the future. He took out the Jade scroll and continued to study the talisman art. A few days later, Li Chang'an had a sudden insight, and his confidence in drawing a Tier 1 middle-grade talisman increased. He had a feeling he was just one final step away. Perhaps I can give it a try now. He calmed his mind and focused his spirit. He didn't try immediately, instead beginning to regulate his breathing. He adjusted his condition to its peak. Half a day later, Li Chang'an sat before his desk, talisman brush in hand, with a sheet of talisman paper spread out before him. Beside him were several common types of elixir pills, such as Qi recovery pills, primordial Qi pills, and Qi condensing pills. If my magical power runs low, I'll swallow an elixir pill to recover immediately. Li Chang'an had already placed a few elixir pills under his tongue in advance. He was fully prepared for this attempt. I'll try the Wind Escape Talisman first. It's an advanced version of the Wind Speed Talisman, so it's less difficult to draw. Li Chang'an focused his full attention and began to draw. The brush tip, stained with spiritual ink, moved slowly across the talisman paper, leaving behind a series of complex patterns. At first, his movements were quite smooth. But before long, Li Chang'an's face began to turn pale, and he felt a hint of weakness. Without hesitation, he immediately swallowed an elixir pill. Only then did he feel a bit better. However, in that instant of swallowing the elixir pill, the brush tip made an extremely minute, erroneous movement. Hiss! A wisp of green smoke rose as the gathered spiritual power dissipated. The talisman paper was instantly ruined. A failure. Sigh, I was still a little off. Li Chang'an sighed lightly. But he wasn't discouraged. After all, both success and failure were within his expectations. He sat cross-legged and recovered the magical power and mental energy he had just consumed. A day later, Li Chang'an tried again. Perhaps because he now had one attempt under his belt, this time was easier than the last, and his talisman brush moved more smoothly. Before he knew it, the entire talisman was finished. Success! A look of joy appeared on Li Chang'an's face. He picked up the talisman and examined it closely. This was the first time he had ever drawn a middle-grade talisman. Where there's a first, there'll be a second and a third. A faint smile touched Li Chang'an's lips. He had just barely crossed the threshold to becoming a Tier 1 middle-grade talisman master. In the following days, he continuously drew middle-grade talismans. His failure rate was high. He would fail about 5 times for every one success. The success rate was pitifully low. He couldn't even break even. He was effectively operating at a constant loss, using his previously accumulated spirit stones to cover the deficit. But Li Chang'an was quite satisfied. This was because, as time went on, his drawing became more and more fluid. His success rate was slowly increasing. It's a good thing I got so many spirit stones from that tribulation cultivator. Li Chang'an was secretly glad. Having enough spirit stones was the source of his confidence. Late one night, Li Chang'an was sitting cross-legged in meditation, restoring his magical power. When midnight arrived, the divination appeared as usual. Divination has been refreshed. Today's divination, ominous. You have been targeted by a tribulation cultivator. The other party is attempting to lure you out of the marketplace. A tribulation cultivator. Li Chang'an's heart jumped in shock. For the past several days, the divination had consistently been neutral. He had thought today would be the same. But he never expected that it would be an ominous reading. How did I get targeted by a tribulation cultivator? Li Chang'an found it incredible. He had always kept a low profile. He barely ever left his home, like a turtle in its shell. How could he possibly have attracted the attention of a tribulation cultivator? Could it be because of the artisan gathering? The divination says the tribulation cultivator plans to lure me out of the marketplace. That means they don't dare to make a move inside the marketplace, so their strength probably isn't too great. The content of the divination put Li Chang'an slightly at ease. As long as he stayed inside the marketplace, he would be safe. And even if some other incident were to occur, the divination would give him a warning. The next day at noon, Li Chang'an was eating lunch. Suddenly, a man's voice sounded from outside the door. "Is Taoist Li home? My name is Wu Yun, we met at the gathering." Hearing this voice, Li Chang'an frowned slightly and put down his bowl and chopsticks. Wu Yun, third layer Qi refining cultivation. He was one of the low-grade talisman masters from the previous gathering. At the time, Li Chang'an had only exchanged a few casual words with him, and was not what you would call familiar with him. "What can I do for you, Taoist Wu?" Li Chang'an remained vigilant as he opened the door. Wu Yun was standing right outside. Next to him stood another person. The two bore a striking resemblance to each other, as if they were biological brothers. "To be honest, there's a matter I need Taoist Li's help with." Wu Yun wore a smile, his tone sincere. He pointed to the person beside him. "This is my brother, Wu Feng. He is a Feng Shui master and spends his years traveling, surveying land and searching for tombs." Hearing this, Li Chang'an's gaze shifted as he sized up the man. The man's attire was similar to that of a Feng Shui master from the mortal realm. His aura was unremarkable, with nothing special about it. "A pleasure to meet you, Taoist Li." Wu Feng smiled and cupped his hands, his tone gentle. Wu Yun continued his introduction. "Not long ago, my brother discovered a large tomb, very likely belonging to a Foundation establishment great cultivator. However, the tomb is protected by a special array, and it will take the combined effort of 3 people to open it." As he said this, a hint of excitement entered Wu Yun's voice. He was here to invite Li Chang'an to help open the great tomb. "Why me?" Li Chang'an asked in a low voice. "Taoist Wu, you've known Liu Yue and the others longer. Why not ask them?" "Those people can't be trusted," Wu Yun said bluntly. He stated that he trusted Li Chang'an more. "They all think you're socially inept, Taoist Li, but I think you're an honest and sincere person. Someone like you is worth befriending." Chapter 12, Li the Turtle. "Taoist Li, every word I've said is true, I swear." Wu Yun's expression was serious, his words earnest. However, with the divination result fresh in his mind, Li Chang'an wasn't about to believe a single word he said. The divination had just warned that a tribulation cultivator would try to lure him out of the marketplace, and now here was Wu Yun. What a coincidence! Besides, even without the divination, Li Chang'an wouldn't have agreed to go. A tomb supposedly belonging to a Foundation establishment cultivator. So what if it's real? Who knows if it holds a fortuitous encounter or just deadly traps? Li Chang'an mused to himself. He remembered how Su Fugui and the others had suffered heavy casualties when they ran into danger, exploring that ancient cultivator's abode. He had never forgotten the incident, and used it as a constant warning to himself. He put on a thoughtful expression. After a moment, he offered a polite refusal. "Taoist Wu, I prefer to play it safe and am not willing to risk exploring a tomb. You should ask someone else." Hearing this, the 2 brothers, Wu Yun and Wu Feng, were both stunned. Foundation establishment level opportunity. Countless people would kill for such a chance. They had delivered it right to Li Chang'an's doorstep, and he had actually refused. "Taoist Li, with our level of aptitude, we have no hope of reaching Foundation establishment in this lifetime if we aren't willing to take risks," Wu Yun said earnestly, enunciating every word. "The income from a low-grade talisman master's skills can only cover daily cultivation needs. It's impossible to advance any further." His elder brother, Wu Feng, also spoke up. As if worried Li Chang'an didn't believe them, he began to describe what he had seen and heard inside the tomb. "Taoist Li, think carefully. If it's really the tomb of a Foundation establishment cultivator, it will most likely contain the treasures needed for Foundation establishment, or even a Foundation establishment pill." As he spoke, Wu Feng's voice grew more excited. "A Foundation establishment pill." the elixir pill craved by countless qi-refining loose cultivators. Why was the Zheng family so powerful? Wasn't it because they were an alchemy family? Their clan possessed a Tier 2 alchemy legacy, and nearly every generation produced a Tier 2 alchemist capable of refining foundation establishment pills, guaranteeing an unbroken line of foundation establishment cultivators. Taoist Li, we loose cultivators have no patrons to support us and no powerful backing to rely on. We must carve out our own future. How can we afford to just play it safe? But no matter what they said, Li Chang'an remained completely unmoved. In the end, Wu Yun could only sigh, a look of regret on his face. Fine, we have troubled you today, Taoist Li. Please don't take offense. The two men cupped their fists in farewell. Take care, you two. Li Chang'an watched them leave. Afterward, he closed his door and made up his mind. For the foreseeable future, I'm not accepting any invitations. I won't go out, not even for a heaven-sent opportunity. No matter how good the opportunity is, can it compare to my daily updated divination? As for whether the Wu brothers were actually tribulation cultivators, Li Chang'an couldn't be bothered to think about it. I'll just assume they are. Time to get back to talisman painting. Li Chang'an calmed his mind. Improving my talisman art is what I should be focusing on right now. For the next half-month, no one else came to his door. The divinations were also uneventful. Until this day, the Wu brothers appeared again. Wu Yun was all smiles and in high spirits, wearing a brand new magic robe. Taoist Li, my brother's earlier guess was wrong. The tomb didn't belong to a foundation establishment cultivator, but to a late-stage qi refining cultivator. Even so, there were still plenty of treasures inside. He said with a smile that they had reaped a bountiful harvest. Since Li Chang'an hadn't gone, they had no choice but to invite another talisman master, a man named Wang. This talisman master Wang received 30% of the treasures, and his net worth skyrocketed. If you don't believe me, Taoist Li, you can go ask Taoist Wang yourself. Everything I've said is the absolute truth. There's no need, I believe you, Taoist Wu. Li Chang'an replied with a smile. Sigh, Taoist Li, those treasures should have been yours. Wu Yun lamented. But Li Chang'an's mindset was peaceful, his heart completely unmoved. After a brief chat, the Wu brothers left. Over the next 2 months, they came to visit Li Chang'an often. Sometimes they would discuss talisman art with him. Other times they would tell him tales of their adventures dowsing for tombs. Over time, their relationship seemed to grow closer and closer. One day, Wu Yun came to the door again, his face flushed with excitement. Taoist Li, my brother has made another new discovery. Oh? Li Chang'an feigned a bit of interest. A new tomb. No, it's a new earth vein. Wu Yun was ecstatic, his voice trembling with excitement. A treasure called Earth Dragon Saliva forms at the source of an earth vein. It's a foundation establishment spiritual object. Its effects are comparable to more than half a foundation establishment pill. Earth Dragon Saliva. Li Chang'an was slightly taken aback. He had, of course, heard of this treasure before. It could aid in foundation establishment, and its effects could be stacked with those of a foundation establishment pill, making it extremely valuable. The Qinghe marketplace had once auctioned off a vial of Earth Dragon Saliva, and it had sold for the astronomical price of 7,000 spirit stones. A treasure of that caliber was something Li Chang'an could only dream of at his current level. He immediately congratulated Wu Yun. Congratulations, then. Taoist Wu has a promising path to foundation establishment ahead. Well, Taoist Li, you've misunderstood. Wu Yun's tone faltered, a hint of embarrassment on his face. He explained that they hadn't gotten their hands on the Earth Dragon Saliva yet. The rock and soil at the source of the earth vein were too hard and thick to break through easily. They were in desperate need of help. They worried that if they delayed too long, someone else would discover the earth vein. Taoist Li, what do you say? Wu Yun asked, his face full of anticipation. He had come to ask for Li Chang'an's help. As long as we can get the Earth Dragon Saliva, the three of us can split it equally. He promised a huge share of the profit. 1/3 of the Earth Dragon Saliva. And with no danger involved, all he had to do was help them dig. However, Li Chang'an just shook his head slightly. I appreciate the kind offer, Taoist Wu, but I've had a setback in my cultivation recently. I'm not feeling well and don't wish to go out. Not feeling well. The expression on Wu Yun's face stiffened. This is earth dragon saliva we're talking about. If any other cultivator heard this news, forget just not feeling well, they'd crawl over even if they were seriously injured and crippled. A foundation establishment spiritual object was enough to drive countless loose cultivators into a frenzy. Yet this Li Chang'an just wanted to hole up in the marketplace, refusing to leave no matter what. Is this guy a turtle or something? Sigh, fine. If you change your mind, Taoist Li, you can let me know anytime. He cupped his fist in farewell and turned to leave. Li Chang'an watched his retreating back, a thoughtful glint in his eyes. A month later, Wu Yun did not come again. Chu Danyu, however, did stop by once. The gathering for artisans like them was about to begin again. Big bro, Elder Luo already promised me. At this gathering, he's going to give you some pointers personally. Chu Danyu's face was full of excitement. But Li Chang'an said calmly, Big bull, I'm not going this time. Huh? Chu Danyu was stunned. Big bro, this is a rare opportunity. Elder Luo's talisman art is on the verge of breaking through to Tier 1 middle grade. Li Chang'an was unconcerned. He was already a middle-grade talisman master himself. Why would he need pointers from a low-grade talisman master? Big bull, I've had another insight recently and need some quiet time to reflect. An insight? Chu Danyu found it hard to understand. No matter how profound the insight, could it really be better than guidance from an elder? Often, just a few words from an elder could save a junior several years of detours. Chu Danyu felt anxious, but there was nothing he could do. He knew that once Li Chang'an made up his mind, he wouldn't easily change it. Chapter 13, A Visit from a Tribulation Cultivator. Just like that, Li Chang'an refused all invitations, dedicating himself to cultivating and practicing talisman painting at home. My talisman art has improved again. Li Chang'an smiled as he picked up a freshly painted talisman to inspect it. Over the past few days, he had grown increasingly proficient with Tier 1 middle-grade talismans, and his success rate was steadily climbing. I really do have a talent for talismans. He could clearly feel his own progress, which left Li Chang'an deeply satisfied. The most frightening thing about cultivation is stagnating for long periods, getting stuck at a certain bottleneck. Whether in one's personal cultivation or in various skills, so-called bottlenecks exist. Many cultivators get stuck for decades, never advancing another inch for the rest of their lives. Not leaving the house was the right choice. I'll just focus on honing my skills. Li Chang'an set down his talisman brush and began to recover his magical power and spiritual energy. However, just because he could remain patient didn't mean others would. That night, just after midnight, a golden light appeared. Divination has been refreshed. Today's divination, ominous. Because you haven't left the marketplace for a long time, a few tribulation cultivators are now in disagreement. The others are prepared to wait a little longer, but Wu Yun has decided to make a move directly within the marketplace. Wu Yun. Li Chang'an's gaze hardened. So he really is a tribulation cultivator. It's a good thing I've been so cautious and refused every invitation. Otherwise, that band of tribulation cultivators would have surrounded me the moment I stepped out of the marketplace. I've been cooped up inside, and yet danger has come knocking on my door. Li Chang'an mused. Wu Yun has put up a good front. Using his identity as a talisman master, he's befriended many people in the marketplace. If I were to accuse him of being a tribulation cultivator, few would believe me. Since the other party had decided to act, he couldn't just sit back and wait to be killed. The next evening, Wu Yun appeared outside Li Chang'an's residence. He was all smiles. Taoist Li, I have obtained a treasure and would like to invite you to appraise it. Taoist Wu, please come in. A hoarse, weary voice called out. The door opened on its own. The room was dim, its windows tightly shuttered. Li Chang'an lay on a bed in the far corner of the room, his presence exceptionally faint, as if he were gravely injured. Seeing this, Wu Yun frowned and asked, Taoist Li, what happened to you? Sigh, a few days ago, I made a mistake while circulating my energy and injured my meridians. It was only a minor discomfort at first, but the injury has been getting progressively worse. Li Chang'an's voice was filled with bitterness. That's why I had to decline your invitation, Taoist Wu. Cough, cough. So that's what happened. Taoist Li, why didn't you say so earlier? Wu Yun's face was a mask of concern, but inwardly he was ecstatic. Damaged meridians. That's an incredibly serious injury. Once they're damaged, you can't use magical power anymore, or the injury will worsen at an alarming rate. No wonder he wouldn't even leave his house for a peerless treasure like Earth Dragon saliva. It turns out he was willing but unable. Taoist Li, I've dabbled a bit in the arts of a spirit doctor. Let me take a look at your injuries for you. Wu Yun strode into the room, his words ringing with sincerity. The concern and worry on his face looked completely genuine. But just then, disaster struck without warning. With a bang, the door slammed shut. Buzz. Within the dim room, dozens of dazzling golden threads instantly flared to life. They crisscrossed and overlapped, forming what looked like a great golden net that radiated an intensely dangerous aura. It enveloped Wu Yun completely. Wu Yun's eyes widened, his expression changing in an instant. Tier 1 middle-grade talismans. That terrifying golden light erupted from Tier 1 middle-grade talismans, golden saber talismans. This talisman was an advanced version of the Mad Blade talisman. Its power was terrifying. It posed a lethal threat, even to cultivators at the middle stage of chi refining. And now, numerous golden saber talismans had been activated at once. It all happened so suddenly that Wu Yun had no way to dodge. How is this possible? Did Li Chang'an just ignore his cultivation and spend a fortune in spirit stones to hoard dozens of golden saber talismans? No. He must have already become a middle-grade talisman master. Despair filled Wu Yun's heart, his face a mask of horror. In that moment, he was consumed by regret. He had originally thought that with his strength and the element of surprise, he could easily take down Li Chang'an. If I'd known Li Chang'an was hiding his true strength so well, I never would have come alone. Xianxia. In an instant, dozens of golden rays pierced through his body. He shuddered violently. Dozens of intersecting wounds instantly appeared all over his body. In the next moment, he disintegrated into chunks of flesh and blood, which splattered across the floor. Farewell, Taoist Wu. With a cold expression, Li Chang'an's figure appeared outside the door. The figure on the bed was a decoy, a false body he had created with a Tier 1 middle-grade memory talisman. Once Wu Yun took the bait, death was all that awaited him. Li Chang'an had prepared a 5-layered deployment in total. The golden saber talismans were only the first layer. This layer alone was enough to be the doom of many middle-stage chi refining cultivators. If Wu Yun had suddenly revealed some heaven-defying power and managed to endure the 5-layered deployment, then Li Chang'an would have had no choice but to flee. Fortunately, the worst-case scenario didn't happen. I could have interrogated him if I'd captured him alive, but the risk was too great. Killing him outright was the proper course of action. Li Chang'an was actually a little puzzled. Why had this group of tribulation cultivators been so fixated on him? They refused to give up, even after so much time. There must be a reason. Could they be accomplices of the 2 tribulation cultivators I killed? But very few people knew about that incident. The news hadn't spread. Could Zhang Jinbao have hired them? Li Chang'an speculated. In this life, since I began cultivating, the person who holds the biggest grudge against me is Zhang Jinbao. Although he didn't show it on the surface, he had never forgotten. Zhang Jinbao was a member of the Zhang family, after all. Both his status and his cultivation were considerable. Although the current Li Chang'an could make him feel a sliver of apprehension, he lacked the strength to take revenge. He could only bide his time. Zhang Jinbao wouldn't dare move against me openly, but he'll most likely try to cause trouble from the shadows. I must be on my guard. Li Chang'an constantly reminded himself never to let his guard down. Wu Yun was dead, but the rest of the tribulation cultivator gang was still alive and could make a move against him at any time. Afterward, he began to clean up Wu Yun's remains. After clearing away all the flesh and blood, Li Chang'an sat cross-legged, took out Wu Yun's storage pouch, and erased the restriction on it. He opened it and took a look. Not bad, another bountiful harvest. A smile spread across his face. Inside the pouch, there were over 100 spirit stones alone. Additionally, there were quite a few talismans and elixir pills. All told, their value was close to 200 spirit stones. There were also 2 Tier 1, low-grade magical artifacts. They were a cyan wood sword and a cyan wood shield. The quality of both was decent, and together they could probably sell for about 100 spirit stones. This Wu Yun was both a talisman master and a tribulation cultivator, earning spirit stones from two sources. No wonder he was so wealthy. Li Chang'an couldn't help but marvel. His personal wealth is greater than that of the two tribulation cultivators I killed before combined. With a thought, Li Chang'an retrieved a jade scroll from the storage pouch. This was the very Tier 1, low-grade talismanic inheritance that Wu Yun had possessed. He gave it a cursory scan. Its contents were similar to the inheritance he had already obtained, with only minor differences in some of the details. Chapter 14, Ancient Secret Realm. Wu Yun's talisman brush was also Tier 1 low-grade, but of slightly better quality than mine. Li Chang'an examined a talisman brush. The talisman brush he used was the one he had bought at the very beginning. The quality was very average. After all, he had been quite poor back then. Now that I'm not short on spirit stones, I can consider buying a middle-grade talisman brush. Li Chang'an mused. A middle-grade talisman brush was superior to a low-grade one in every aspect, especially in conducting spiritual power, but the price was also quite steep. Even one of ordinary quality sold for over 100 spirit stones. For his past self, this was an astronomical price. Now, that price was within his means. It sure is nice to have money. Li Chang'an sighed. In the past, he used to pinch every spirit stone. He put down the talisman brush. He continued to take inventory of the other items. Soon, a dark red stone caught his attention. It's actually an earth-fire stone. Li Chang'an was slightly surprised. Earth-fire stone, a Tier 1 top-grade fire element treasure. It was extremely rare and quite valuable. It was highly sought after by artifact refiners. Using an earth-fire stone as the main material, and adding a few supplementary materials, one could refine a Tier 1 top-grade fire element magical artifact of excellent quality. A pity it's not a wood attribute treasure. I can use it for trade in the future, though. Li Chang'an shook his head inwardly. He himself had a wood spirit root. Fire element magical artifact was incompatible with his own spiritual power. He figured Wu Yun had also planned to trade the earth-fire stone, since Wu Yun also had a low-grade wood spirit root. After putting away the earth-fire stone, Li Chang'an continued to take stock of the remaining items. The rest of the items were not very valuable. He quickly finished his inventory. The next day, Li Chang'an made a trip to the 100 Treasures Pavilion. He spent 130 spirit stones to purchase a decent quality middle-grade talisman brush. Manager Xianxia of the 100 Treasures Pavilion didn't quite understand this. Taoist Li, you've only mastered the skills for low-grade talismans. You can't even draw a high-quality talisman yet. You have no use for a middle-grade talisman brush, so why waste the spirit stones you've worked so hard to save? Manager Xianxia tried to persuade him. He was a conscientious businessman with a rather good reputation in the marketplace. Li Chang'an showed a helpless expression and replied, "Sai, my craft has hit a bottleneck recently, and I can't seem to make any progress. Perhaps a better talisman brush will help." Seeing his insistence, Manager Xianxia didn't press the matter further. He simply reminded him, "Taoist Li, everything should be centered around your cultivation. Skills are merely supplementary. You should buy more things that are helpful for your cultivation." Manager Xianxia is right. Li Chang'an nodded, then left the 100 Treasures Pavilion. That afternoon, he regulated his magical power and calmed his mind, then used the new talisman brush to attempt drawing a middle-grade talisman. The brush tip glided slowly and steadily across the talisman paper. The entire process was exceptionally smooth. It was much easier than before. Before he knew it, a middle-grade golden saber talisman was successfully drawn. Indeed, a craftsman must first sharpen his tools to do his work well. A smile appeared on Li Chang'an's face. The money spent on the talisman brush was well worth it. For the next few days, he spent all day at home practicing his cultivation and talisman painting, just as before. One evening, Wu Feng's voice suddenly sounded from outside. "Taoist Li, are you home?" Hearing the voice, Li Chang'an opened the door. It was all smiles as he cupped his hands in greeting to Wu Feng. "Taoist Wu, it's been a while." "Taoist Li." The moment he saw Li Chang'an, Wu Feng's expression changed slightly. His gaze lingered on Li Chang'an for a moment. Taoist Li, have you seen my younger brother recently? Taoist Wu Yun. Li Chang'an shook his head slightly. He looked puzzled and asked, has something happened? It's nothing, just, my brother and I have had a bit of a falling out recently. I see. Li Chang'an feigned a look of realization. He pondered for a moment. Taoist Wu, you two wouldn't be fighting over the distribution of that earth dragon saliva, would you? Li Chang'an glanced around and lowered his voice. It's not my place to say, but when it comes to something as important as foundation establishment, even blood brothers must keep clear accounts. This, Wu Feng was taken aback. He clearly hadn't expected Li Chang'an to steer the conversation in this direction. The so-called earth dragon saliva was just a lie they had fabricated to lure Li Chang'an out of the marketplace. The two talked for a while longer. Li Chang'an never gave him any useful information. Wu Feng seemed to lose interest and finally cupped his hands to take his leave. After turning around, a hint of killing intent appeared in his eyes. A few days ago, Wu Yun had felt that waiting around was not a solution and decided to go to Li Chang'an's door and act directly. The others had disagreed. So Wu Yun left alone, vowing that he would definitely return with Li Chang'an's head. But after that, all contact was lost. It was as if he had vanished from the face of the earth. Could Li Chang'an have killed him? Wu Feng's face was grim. He didn't think Li Chang'an had the ability, but there were always exceptions. Inside the house, Li Chang'an closed the door, his expression growing colder. This Wu Feng is more vigilant than Wu Yun. He wondered what this group of tribulation cultivators would do next. In any case, with the prompts from his divination, Li Chang'an held the upper hand in terms of information. Over the next few months, he kept a close eye on his divination and paid constant attention to all matters, big and small, inside and outside the marketplace. To his surprise, Wu Feng never came again. It seemed he had given up completely. During these months, however, a major event occurred that captured the attention of nearly every cultivator in the marketplace. An ancient secret realm. Not long ago, in a valley not far from the marketplace, the ground had suddenly collapsed, revealing a passage. Passing through that passage led to a dilapidated secret realm. It might contain treasures left over from ancient times. Such secret realms were not uncommon. News of them appearing in various places could be heard from time to time. It's said that in ancient times, a world-shattering war took place that left the entire world in ruins. The countless secret realms we have now are all a result of that great war. The Zhang family has put out a call, encouraging loose cultivators to enter and seek opportunities. Chu Danyu and the others couldn't make up their minds, so they all came to find Li Chang'an. The four of them reunited in Li Chang'an's house. Brother Chang'an, what do you think? Sun Yulan asked softly, her beautiful eyes like pools of water. Me? Li Chang'an shook his head slightly. He had no intention of going at all. After all, he wasn't short on spirit stones. Wasn't it better to stay safely at home and practice talisman painting? I won't be going. If you want to go, I can sell you a batch of talismans at a low price to give you more ways to protect yourselves. But of course, it's best if you don't go. Although his divination hadn't given him any prompts, this kind of ancient secret realm was always fraught with danger. Chu Danyu immediately said, since Brother Li isn't going, then I'm not going either. Ever since his walk through the ghost gate, he had resolved to learn from Li Chang'an's cautious ways. Su Fugui and Sun Yulan, however, were hesitant. They had no special skills to rely on. If they didn't take the risk, they were fated to never reach foundation establishment in this lifetime. You two should wait a bit longer. Go in to look for opportunities after the first few batches of cultivators have explored it. Li Chang'an offered his advice. The first few batches of cultivators might find more opportunities, but they would also face more unknown dangers. Those in the middle stage and late stage of qi refining had better means of survival. As for those like Su Fugui, who were in the early stage of qi refining, it wasn't advisable to rush to the front.